Well, thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And, I'm here today to speak on Bill C-270, which is an act to amend the criminal code around pornographic material. And we all, I think, in this House agree that we don't want to see children treated in a way that is sexualized. Children deserve to be children as long as possible. And we know that far too often, without consent, young people are exposed to these kind of predators who take advantage of their vulnerability. And so I think it's important. I look forward to seeing this bill go to committee where we can do some of the work. But we also have to acknowledge some of the factors that move us into this place of having images online without young people's consent, wanting to make sure that if you're participating in this realm, that the people are 18 or older, and we need to find ways to address this. And we know that there's not the resources as well for enforcement to go after some of these very serious predators. And so we need to see the resources there as well supported so that we can move forward and protect young people. So I look forward to hearing those witnesses. We know that as we move forward with this type of legislation, we have to look at ways that express consent can be given and that it's safe. And I think that's something that we should be talking about a lot here, is not only the outcome of this behavior where we see young people being exploited, where we see predators using technology to groom young people, mislead them into thinking they're someone else, and then young people are sharing contents about themselves that they shouldn't be doing. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that when I think about this kind of behavior, that we do have to understand that these are predators, that the bad people are not easy people to see. And whenever it's revealed, we're often shocked by the members of our community that are part of this. So, I hope that this discussion also looks at how we address that. And when we think of preventative measures, I think a significant part of prevention, and there's a lot of factual information that support this, the part of the preventative measures is looking at how we see sex education through our education fields and in the places where young people can come together and learn factual information. So I was looking at this report by the Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights, and they talked about the state of sex ed in Canada. And I love the hashtag. It says, sex ed saves lives. And I believe that is true. I believe it's absolutely true. If young people are exposed, and that is the world we live in with technology right now, young people have access to information. It's getting harder and harder for people who love the young people to try to find ways to keep them safe. Part of doing that is allowing young people to have the appropriate education that they need. And this report said some things, and I'm going to quote here. It says, in the sum, the sex ed most young people in Canada receive is 1, not meeting international standards and best practices, nor is it meeting our own 2019 Canadian guidelines for sexual education. It is outdated. 3, it is non-comprehensive. 4, it's not monitored or evaluated to ensure high quality delivery. And 5, offered by educators who receive low to no support from provinces and educational systems and whose comfort levels are often low. And this does lead to a lack of safety for young people if they don't understand the information that's around them. And if you have issues as a young person, at any age really, around sexuality, and you're fearful and you don't know who to ask, often you go where there are secrets because you're keeping a secret about your own understanding. So we have to think about that. We have to think about how young people are prepared or not prepared for these things. And so as they're exploring, if they don't have a safe adult to go to and learn more from, if they don't have a place of education that teaches them factual information about their bodies and what is happening, then we leave them vulnerable. And I think it's really important not to leave young people vulnerable. I know I had the great pleasure of raising 2 beautiful sons, And we spent a lot of time talking about things so that they would have understanding. And what I found is my openness led to their friends coming to ask me questions. And sometimes they were very interesting questions. But it allowed for that safe adult that was going to talk to them really openly about it, that was not going to create a secret or a hiding place, but really be open and upfront. And it really seemed to help. And this report also talks, and I quote again, and not to worry to the amazing people in this house, I'll make sure to send the link so that they know where the content is coming from. It says this: the federal government, as signatory to international human rights treaties, is failing to hold provinces and territories accountable to delivering comprehensive sexuality education in line with human rights obligations. This runs contrary to positions taken by Canada at the UN that support the full implementation of a comprehensive sexuality education around the world. So, the threat is everywhere. I know it's scary, but a defense mechanism is by making sure that people are properly educated, especially young people. I think that regardless of our opinions on a lot of things in this house, everybody here understands, and hopefully understands, that children are a precious gift and that we want to protect them as long as we possibly can. But ignoring reality isn't protecting them. Not talking about things that are happening for them and their friends is not helping them. It's keeping them less safe. So let's make sure we educate people who will educate our children, that we're engaged in that process, and that we make sure that that is one of the beautiful things of defense that we've created in our children, knowing that they can talk about these things openly. The other thing that has come up as a concern around this bill that I hope that we address meaningfully in the study that we're doing is really around the safety of sex workers. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. We know that there's a lot of people that are of the age of consent, and they are doing this work. It's happened forever. I can't tell you when it wasn't happening. We know that sex work continues to be something that's just part of us as a people across the planet. And one of the things that worries me, again, is we have to look at how we're building the defenses so that we can protect our children. And part of building defenses is making sure that sex work is safe, that people have the ability to talk about what's happening to them, and that they're not put into positions where they are made increasingly vulnerable. I think it's interesting. I was reading a report that Pivot, the Legal Society in BC, sent as a submission to the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls for its report to the UN Human Rights Council on prostitution and violence against women and girls, and it was done in January of this year. And one of the things that they talked about, it says qualitative research and data from Canada consistently shows that criminalization and policing of clients under demand legislative models shape sex workers' health and safety, and that police-based enforcement heighten the risk of violence by reducing sex workers' ability to employ client screening mechanisms and negotiate safer terms of sexual transactions, including condom use to prevent HIV, STI. So, once you think about this, like when we look at the legislation that we're making in this place and across this country and every province and territory, part of what we have to be addressing is how do we keep people safe? I always think about this. When we have sexuality and that part of our just human nature sort of secret and repressed and pushed down, it comes out in ways that is really dysfunctional and sick and violent. And that worries me. So we need to make it safer for people to do what they do, because it takes it out of the shadows and it makes it something that we can actually deal with that's out there. And the more that we repress it and push it aside and pretend it isn't happening, the less safe children are, the less safe people are, and it's not okay. I can think of times in my community where I was approached about particular segments of the community that refused to use condoms when they were having sex with sex workers, and desperate people were getting into desperate situations. But the spreading of STIs, the spreading of HIV was only increasing, and the health outcomes were terrible. So I think when we look at this issue, we should make sure that we're keeping children precious, and making sure that we're keeping sex workers safe and making sure education is at the core of it. Thank you.